Greetings, 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 everyone. Steve, Paracords of Kindness. How you doing today? Hopefully your weaving's been happy. Okay, what I have for you today is I'm going to show you how I weave and stitch a stitched modified Dignity. Okay, it's a 6-strand core, independent core. Therefore, you have the core strands exposed in a few places, and it gives you that choice of having another color option in the bracelet. Here's one I've done. This one is done in, what is this, espresso brown. The core strands running lengthwise are fox orange. The little accent 550 forming the chevron pattern is royal orange, and I stitched this one in gold rush, and that's been put on a brown tactical buckle or a metal safe lock buckle, right? I did this one kind of in a fall themed colors, okay? But the one we're going to be working on today is this one. We're going to put this one on a brushed brass metal safe lock buckle, tactical buckle. It's done in gold. Gold is the core strands. The accent is smoke gray, and the main body is in midnight blue, and I stitched it in gold. And this one turned out really, really well. But if you want to see how I weave this with all the tips and the tricks that this channel's known for, stick around, because we'll get right to it. Okay, weavers, I'm set up. But before we get to weaving, let me give you the background information and give credit where credit's due. Okay, the original design of this I got off of Instagram. The account, which I will put in the description below, is ce.paracord.by.sfs. Okay? And I've done one by this person before. This is a stitched Anaconda. I'll leave the tutorial link for this in the cards and the description below. Oh, and just so we know, silicone black metal safe lock buckle or a tactical buckle is done in blackish gray, maroon, charcoal gray, and I stitched it in smoke gray. Okay. Here's one I've done. I don't have a tutorial for this. Basically like a brass shackle with a brass snakehead bead. It's a trilobite in, this is armory green, which is very similar to olive drab, and then gold and maroon stitching. And that bead is more of a lanyard bead, but I kind of finagled it to get it to go on this bracelet. But yeah, there we go. Okay, so like I said, Instagram account, CE Paracord by SFS. Okay, I call this a stitched modified Dignity. Okay, I'll give you the background information. The reason I say it's modified is because I looked on this account on Instagram, because there's a lot of pictures of bracelets, and then there's a lot of tutorials. And there's over 700 posts. Some of them are tutorials or pictorials. Some of them are just, simply pictures of this person's work. And I wanted to do this, and I looked. One time I scrolled through every picture, and I never found a tutorial for this one. And, a week or so later, I said, let me look again. So I started looking, and I thought, you know what? I bet you there's another bracelet that has been done similar to this that I can find a tutorial for. And I can kind of reverse engineer it. Which I found one, and I looked at the pictorial for that one and compared it to what I'm going to do today. Well, what I'm going to do today, the picture that I saw, this person had woven some of it, and then the rest of the core strands were exposed. And I could tell that it was a 4-strand core. And I tried it that way, and it worked. And I tried it on a 6-strand core, hence the reason I say it's modified. And I liked it better on the 6-strand core. So that's the way I've done it. Hence why I call it a modified Dignity. Okay, now the stitching, for those who follow my channel, that's all me. I'll do a bracelet. First thing I'll do is grab a stitching needle, piece of scrap microcord, and start trying to find a way to stitch it. Okay, now, with that said, let's see. Today I'm going to put this one on a 20 millimeter or a 3/4 inch equivalent buckle, a brush or brushed brass buckle. I get these for Paracord EU. Metal Safe Lock Buckle is what they're labeled as. But, you know, it sounds cooler. It is less of a mouthful to say tactical buckle. Okay. It's a 6-string cord, independent or standalone or self-contained cord, whatever you want to call it. Okay, let's see. All the numbers, measurements, the add to factor, all that stuff is in the description below. So check that out. Okay, now, I'll say this. The way I set up a 6-string cord is slightly different and probably different than a lot of the video tutorials you'll see on YouTube. I do mine slightly different. Okay? If you want to know how I do this, look in the description below. There's a link to a playlist called Core Strand Setups or something like that. And you can go on there and see how I've done this. Okay? But basically, I'll show you this. You got your 2 cords up here. This is going to be the one for the main body of the bracelet. Here, I've got one here I'll show you. Right here. Here's one I've done on a brown buckle with, what is this? Fox orange. The little accent pieces is royal orange. I stitched it in gold rush, and the dark brown, which is the main body, in this case going to be the midnight blue, is espresso brown. Okay? Okay, but you set it up, you take your 2 accent pieces, and you even them through the top. But the way I've done this, for those who watch a lot of my videos, I always try to put these little locking knots on the top, and that way I tighten it all up by hand, tighten those up, then I'll stretch my jig to get the tension on it, right? And those 2, as I call them, locking knots, hold it in place so nothing slips, okay? Now, here, let me zoom in so I can show you what I'm talking about. Many of you have seen me do this, but for those who haven't, hopefully this will make sense. All you do is you set up your 6-string cord. I do a double, or a cow hitch at the bottom, and I just come up, back, forth. And when the last 2 strands, these outer strands, they come up, and then they go down through the top of the slot, and they're sticking out the back. Okay? You can put this locking knot one of 2 ways. You can either come around and go down through there, and then back through that loop you've created and pull it tight. Well, what you end up having is these 2 ends here, they will be sticking out this way, right? I've basically just reversed this locking knot. Instead of coming out and going down through there, what I do is I go up through this slot, it goes down, and it comes back up through here, and the loop is created on this back side. Right, so it would come up through here, like this, and this loop that's created on the back side, you run this back through this loop, and you tighten it up like that. See, this little knot here is basically the same as this. I'm just doing that to show you. And what that ends up doing is it causes the core string to be pointing toward the center of the bracelet. You see what I'm saying? And the one on this side is pointing this way. That way they're both, from their respective sides, they're both pointing toward the center. Because these aren't going to be used, hence independent cord, they're not going to be used in the weave. But I always make it, and you wonder, why is it so long? I leave enough, that way I can get my fit on there in the end after I wove and everything, and I can back weave it into the bracelet. Alright? Does that make sense? So what I'll do with this before I start weaving, I'll back out and I'll show you. You can do this, whatever, but this is a little method I got. I just take these and I just kind of wrap them around up here on the top. All right, just kind of get it out of the way. And then I got one of these little stationary paper office supply clip type things, and I just, boop, and that just kind of holds all that excess up out of the way. Does that make sense? Okay, now. Let's see. Couple of things I'll say when we start. This one right here is one of those that for me anyway, because of my weaving style, when I stitch this, it changes the sizing factor, the add to number of it slightly. Because of the way the stitching does, it draws it back together, and it causes it to end up being a little bit thicker. So I have to size it up a little bit when I know I'm going to stitch it. And now if I'm not stitching it, which I very rarely make one of these that I don't stitch, I wouldn't size it up as much. That add to number, wrist measurement plus the add to equals what you measure on your jig. And that add to variable is based on the thickness. When I know I'm going to stitch this one, I have to increase that add to just a little bit. Makes sense? But all the numbers down below are for a stitched version. Okay? I'll say this now, and hopefully I'll remember to mention this. The way the cut and burns are done on this in the end, just the nature. Let's see if I can show you one of these. Hopefully you can see this, the way this is set up on camera. If you look at this, you see these dark brown, the espresso brown pieces. You see how that's what creates the thickness on this weave. And in between this one and the one next to it, there's a drop right there, right? Basically, the back of the bracelet's not smooth. Those little pieces of brown are raised up compared to that piece of orange that sits down in there, right? Okay, so when you go to do your cut and burns, it can be a little tricky, because if I can get this thing to focus so you can see what I'm talking about, the cords are going to terminate between these two brown pieces. So when you cut them, you got to be careful not to burn all the brown, only burn what you've cut, right? And it kind of comes into play when you go up here at the top, especially to anchor the stitching part, the micro cord. But when we get there, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Just be mindful. That's something to kind of stick in the back of your brain housing group for when you get there. Okay. With all that said, let's get to weaving. This one's not very difficult. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you right now. Many of you seen my videos, and I'll show you the mechanics, but then I'll eventually show you kind of some shortcuts that I've taken to make it less steps, right? But I'm gonna show you the basic mechanics in the beginning. Is the thing gonna focus for us? Yeah, there we go. But I'm going to show you the mechanics in the beginning so you can see them. But then I'm eventually just going to show you how, when I sit down to do one, how I just weave through it and get it done. Okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this smoke gray, if I haven't mentioned this, midnight blue, smoke gray, and gold. Okay, this smoke gray is going to be this accent piece that's running at like the chevron V-shape sort of angles here on either side. That's what the smoke gray is. Okay, now we're going to start with it. I'm going to show you. I'll show you on this one because I see it right now. The mistake I made. You see how these two pieces are not sitting even. These are even. These are even. These are even. But these first two are not quite even. Now you can kind of adjust it. But it doesn't want to sit right just because it's the very top first one you do. So be mindful of it when you do when you start this weave. Be mindful and try to get them things to line up. And most likely, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, most likely when you actually do it, they're going to slip. It happens to me every time, so just be mindful. But what we do, we got them both coming out the ends here. Let's zoom in. Okay. All we're going to do is we got three core strands on one side, 3 on the other side. All we're going to do is take it and we're going to go around the back and come up through the middle, right? And we're going to do the other one the same way. And we're going to pull them up through there, right? And keep them on their respective sides. The one that comes down and around, that's this one and this one. They stay that way. They don't ever cross over, right? And you just push it up in there. Pull it, and you see how they're sitting right next to each other. Well, most likely what's going to happen once you start weaving, they're going to slip. But just be mindful and try to keep them next to each other. That way it'll be neat, clean, tight, even. Okay? So we do that. Now you can do this one of two ways. You can get this out of the way, which is what I'm going to do for the purpose of the camera. But normally I'd leave them there and just weave up under them or whatever. But we're gonna do them right there. I'm going to get this out of the way so you can see what I'm about to do. Okay. I'm going to start with this side. What I'm going to do is we're going to take this cord and these two outer strands that are on this side, we're going to go over the top of those. Over the top, down through that slot, and we're going to pull our excess through. Right? Okay, now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. We're going to take it. And we're going to go over these two core strands that are on this side, down through that slot, and pull the excess through. Okay, now, here you go. You notice this one, the one I did first, is closest to the buckle, and the other one is closest to the buckle down there. Doesn't matter which way you do it, but remember to be consistent every time you do the repetition of the knot. If you start with that one on the top, always do that one on the top. Okay? Now, when I get to the shortcuts and all the stuff I'm going to show you, that will come into play. So I would suggest if you've never done this and you're having trouble following, just do it exactly like I'm doing it right there. Do that one first and then do that one second. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to take this cord from this side and we're going to come up Let me make sure that I'm going to do this right. Before I start explaining it, and I explain it the wrong way, let me make sure. Yeah. We're going to take this cord, and we're going to come up, and through that slot again, we're going to go down through there. Notice I'm going under here, under the blue one right there, under it, makes sense? Under, and it's coming back around, and it's going over the top of that blue one, and then it's just going back through that slot. And what we're going to do is we're going to pull our slack through onto this side. Makes sense? So it's coming around. It's going over those first two, down through there. It's coming out over here. And it's looping up and going over the top, over those two, through that second slot from this side, and then they're coming over here. Right? Now don't pull your slide. Don't pull it tight yet. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing over here on this side. We're going to take this one. We're going to come around, we'll go over the top here, over those two strands, and down through that second slot. And then I'm going to pull the excess toward this direction, over here, right? Now I'm going to take out some of the excess so you can kind of see what we got going on here. Now hopefully, just if you need to, pause it right there and look at what I got going on. Okay, now to tighten this one up, this is one of these that you got to tighten in sections. I can't just grab this cord and expect it to tighten up. I can't pull it because it's looped around over itself and it won't tighten up correctly. So you got to do it in sections. Okay, now this is what my channel is known for. I'm going to show you how to tighten this one up the way I do it anyway. What I'll do is I'm going to take this where this comes around and it comes out over here on this side, and the same thing, this one comes around and comes out over here on this side. I'm going to grab those two pieces, push them toward the top. See, oh, you see what I'm saying? You see how those two grays they're not even. Like I said, they're not going to want to stay even, that first one anyway. Okay, so make sure they're even. We'll go back to this. We push everything up, push it toward that buckle. We grab these, and we pull. And this is the way I've been doing it. Make sure you got these on the side. Like I said, it comes through, and it wraps over here. Make sense? Okay. So take these, push it toward the buckle, and kind of pull it tight. And I've just been kind of holding my finger back there on the back side and then pinching it right there. And it keeps the tension on that section of the knot. And then this one is going to tighten up right here. And make sure this thing doesn't have a twist in it when you go to pull it. And pull it like that. You could take your thumb and you can roll that slack through there. Or you can use this thumb and roll it. Alright? Okay, now we'll just switch hands. Alright. And that's it. That's the bracelet right there, though. I'm going to push it up again. Okay, now that we've done it, you can't see it very well on this camera. But what it's done is caused these two center strands to kind of sit up above these four on this side, on the two on either side of it. You see what I'm saying? And that's the way it's supposed to do. That's what causes the thickness of this one. Okay, now, we're back to this. All we're going to do with this is the same thing. We're going to bring one side around the back side, and come right up through that center. Keep it on its respective side. All these two gray pieces are doing are just wrapping around those core strands on that side, spiraling down. The same thing it's doing on this side, just doing it the other direction. So we go around, up under, through that slot, pull the excess through. Now, you'll take it. See how they're even? And just kind of push it up, pulling them. You can kind of pull them straight up, or you can pull them up toward the camera, but also at an angle this direction. What that will do is cause it to push everything up toward that buckle, right? Now, you ain't trying to get this tight right this second, because it's not going to stay. It's not going to remain tight, right? We'll get them out of the way so you can see, and we're going to do this again. Now remember, don't get confused, because this is something I did a few times. Like I said, initially, these cords are going to cross sides in the beginning stage of this knot. But once you do that second loop, it stays on the side that it's on. So make sure when you go to do this, you don't get them crossed the wrong direction. Right? If you need to, look back there and make sure it's on the side that it's supposed to be on. Does that make sense? Okay, so we're going to do this again. We're going to take this one. I'm going to come, because it's coming around from the back of the bracelet. We're going to come around the outer edge, go over those first two strands, and go down through that slot and pull our excess through. All right. Now we're going to do the same thing over here. Going to bring it around from the back, up over those two outer core strands on that side, go down through that slot, and pull it through. Pull the excess through. And like I said, this one is toward the buckle, and this one is toward the buckle down here. You see what I'm saying? Now, it's going to be important in just a second. I'm going to show you why. I'll show you why when I get there. All right? So, now, this end, like I said, it starts from this side, it wraps around, but it crosses over to this side. Now that it's over here, it's going to stay over here. So when I do this loop, I'm going to come up over the top of that piece of blue, over those two core strings, and down through that slot. Right? And I'm going to pull the excess this direction so it stays on that side. Makes sense? Now we're going to do the same thing over here. Go over the blue, over those 2 outer cord strands. And that excess, I'm going to pull this direction. Alright. We'll give it kind of a loose cinch. So like I said, see this loop here? We see that? And then this one is on this side. Here, let me do it this way so you can see. Make sense? Okay. Now, kind of loose cinch it up. And I reach back here with my fingers, kind of put them in here, this groove, and kind of push it up. Right? Okay, now that I got it kind of where I want it, I'm going to push it toward the top. I'm going to pull it and get it tight, and then just kind of pinch it with my fingers. And then this one, when you go to pull this one this direction, make sure it's this one. Make sure you're not doing this cord. You see what I'm saying? And then you just kind of roll it. Do the same thing over here. Alright. When you get it, now that it's a little tight, a lot of times I'll push it up again and kind of give it a little thing. Okay, now, this is where we tighten up this gray part. I told you, these little pieces right here are not going to be tight. This is where we tighten up those. Reach up here, make sure, like I said, you get up here and they get crossed and you can't tell. Make sure you've got the one this cord is going to stay on this side. So make sure when you grab these, you don't get them crossed the wrong way. You get them on their respective sides and you pull them up, straight up, or you can pull it up toward the camera and at an angle toward this buckle, and that'll kind of push it up. All right. Now, by me pulling that, it's tightened up these 2 pieces of gray here. Now they're tight the way we want them. Okay? Now, I'm going to do this one more time, and then I'm going to show you my little quick, speedy method, so to speak. All right? So, we're back to the beginning of the repetition. It's going to be the 3rd one. The grays go around and up through that middle slot. Pull your excess through, keeping this one on this side and this one on this side. And kind of give it a little loose cinch. That's all you got to do, a little loose cinch. All right, I'm going to get them out of the way so you can see. All right, now make sure, again, make sure that these cords here, make sure these cords are still on the sides that they're supposed to be on. We don't want them to get crossed because what happens is they're back there hanging and you can't actually see which one is which. And they'll kind of get it and you'll grab it and it'll be you're grabbing the cord that's on this side. No. Just make sure, be careful. So I can reach up there and I can feel it. I can feel that I've got them on the correct side. Okay, so again. It's coming from underneath the bracelet. We're going to come up over those 2 outer cord strands and down through that 2nd slot. And we're going to pull it to this side. Pulling our excess through, leaving a little loop. Same thing over here. Come up and over those 2 outer cord strands, down through that 2nd slot, and pulling your excess through. All right. Now taking this one. Now that it's on this side, it stays on this side until the next repetition. Over here, over those 2 outer cord strands on that side, down through that slot, I'll pull your excess through. You see how I'm holding it right here? That way when I pull it, it doesn't try to tighten itself up because I need this slack to pull, to tighten the knot up in sections. Now, this one right here, same thing. Over over the blue, over those two outer cord strands on that side, down through that second slot, and we're going to pull our excess through to this side. Right? Give it a little look. Take out some of that excess, work it up. Once you get it up there, make sure you got it on the right, your cord's on the correct side. This one is over here. Like I said, you don't want them crossed. You want them to stay on that side where that loop is. Okay, we push it up toward the buckle. Pull it. Pull this side. Pushing it toward the buckle and pulling it tight. I just kind of pinch it. Just kind of hold it there. Now this one right here, we're going to pull this and it's going to tighten this loop up. Make sure it doesn't have a twist in it. I'm holding it in my hand, pulling it as I'm using my thumb to roll it around. Or you can do it with your other thumb. In the heat of the battle, I'll do a little bit of both methods. So push it up like that. Okay, now we're back. That's the third repetition. Now I'm going to show you this quicker method of the way I do this. I kind of combine all this stuff I do here. I kind of combine it. That's why I said when you do whichever one you start with that is closest to this buckle, and then the other one is closest down to the buckle, you got to maintain the consistency. Because if you're going to try to do this little shortcut I'm going to show you, all I'm doing is just kind of combining the steps into less motion. That way it moves faster, if that makes any sense. So we come over. Like I say, it's coming from around the bracelet, over those two outer cord strings on that side, and down through that slot. Now what I'm going to do is since I'm already holding this cord, I'm not going to go to this one. I'm going to form me a bite, and I'm going to run it down through here where it needs to go. Right? We're kind of doing the steps out of order. That way I'm not jumping from this cord to this cord to this cord to this cord. I'm going to stay with that one cord, do what needs to be done, then I'm going to come to the other cord. That makes sense? Just like before, we're going to pull that excess through. Right? Now see, that's what it would look like minus this cord over here. Now, here's the deal. Like I said, since I had my hand on that cord, I went ahead and did everything I needed to do with that cord. Now I'm going to switch to the other cord, and I'm going to do all the steps. So you got to pay attention to make sure you get your mechanics right. Same thing, but we're going to have to go through this loop. Okay, so this loop that we formed, we're going to go through this loop, and we're going to take out that bite over those two cord strands and down through this slot down here in the bottom. And that's keeping that cord toward the bottom buckle and this other cord toward the top buckle. Does that make sense? But you got to go through this loop you've created. I'm going to reach up here and I'm going to pinch it to hold this in place so I still have this slack. That way when I go to pull this, it doesn't pull it tight right there. So I'm going to hold it and I'm going to pull the excess through. Right? And now we're back to just doing what we have always done on this side. Going over the top here, down through that second slot from that direction. I'm grabbing that bite. I'm pulling it through. I'm keeping it on this side. Now see, it's the same thing. I just kind of did the steps in a different order over here. That way I wasn't jumping from one cord to the other cord to the other cord. Just stay with one cord, do everything that needs to be done, and then do the other cord. That way my hand, it's less movement. Makes it a little quicker. Right? Now, We'll kind of loose cinch it, pushing everything up. Oop, wrong one, wrong one. All right, reaching up here in that middle, 3 on either side, and just kind of pinching my fingers together and pushing up toward the buckle. Oh, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. I left out a step. I left out a step, but that's okay because I can fix this. I forgot to do my grays. If it happens, all you got to do is this big loop you got here at the top, just go down through it. Come up through the middle. Same thing. I do that quite often. I'll get to moving and I'll forget to do my gray, and then I'll realize, see. Now we're here, we're going to tighten this. We're going to pull these and it's going to tighten that piece up. Yeah. Makes sense. Hopefully they didn't mess everybody up. I just did that gray out of order. Alright, now we get to right here. See how the grays are right next to each other? We want to keep them that way. Be mindful of that because we don't want them sitting uneven. It just doesn't look right. So now that we got that, we'll tighten up. We're going to tighten all this up down here. Again, with this loop, tightening that side up in the bottom of this loop over here, right? See, we're going to get it up there to the top, up that direction, push it up, kind of pull it. Alright, and then just kind of pinching it and holding it with your finger. And pull this one. Make sure the cord you're pulling is going to tighten up that loop right there. And then rolling, getting the slack out, and then switching hands and doing the same thing on the other side. Okay, now, we're back to right here. See that? What we just did on those grays is loose. Well, we got to tighten that up. All right. Now they're tight. If I can get a hold of them, they're tight now. And again, I'm going to push that up one more time. Just kind of make sure everything's tight. Okay, now I'm going to do it one more time. I'm going to show you the little tricky out of order step. Let's not forget this. Do this first. Around, go up to the middle slot, pull your slack through, keeping it on that side. Around the back side, up to the middle slot, keeping it on that side. Alright, I'll push it up. I'm going to get this out of the way. Now, make sure you got, like I said, make sure you've got them on the correct side. Make sure don't let them get crossed back there where you can't see them. Okay, show you again. It's coming from around the back, come up over the first 2 core strands through that second slot, pull your slack through, and then just reach back up here with your finger, pull you out a little bit to get you a bite in your hand. That's called a bite, B-I-G-H-T, for those who may not know. And then go over those 2 outer core strands through that second slot. Kind of holding it and pulling that excess through, but pulling it onto this side over here. Alright. Now that loop, we got to have this loop because we got to come through it. Same thing. Pulling it and get you a little bite and go through this loop right here. And then over them 2 core strands through that second slot, but do it down below all this stuff. And I'm going to maintain this loop, just hold it, and I'm going to pull everything through. Pulling it out a little bit, forming you a bite, over that blue strand, over those 2 outer core strands, and through that second slot. I'm grabbing it, I'm pulling it to stay on that side. Alright. Loose cinching it up there. Alright. Pushing it up. Pulling it tight. And just kind of holding it. Pulling that one. Same thing over here. Pushing it up. Now we're going to go back to here. We see how they're loose. We're going to pull them. Make sure you don't get these crossed. You always got to make sure on this one that you don't get your two grays or the two blues crossed. You don't want them crossed. Okay, so we're just going to pull this up. And what I'm doing is I'm holding my fingers right here and I'm putting pressure away from the camera as I'm pulling this, you know, counteracting the force. Make sure when you do this that they stay next to you. You don't want them. All right, that's it. That's all there is to it. Man, that thing looks good. These colors always look good together, but man, I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out on this weave, but they look good. Okay, now, there you go. That's the mechanics of it. Okay, now what I'm going to do now, this is the part, like I've said to people, you can watch these YouTube videos, and they'll show you the mechanics. Over here, under there, pull tight. And, right? Me, I try to give you how to tighten, which direction to pull it, and how tight to pull it. That way the thing will be consistent. Because you can watch one of these YouTube videos and get the mechanics. The over here, under there. That's the easy part. What a lot of the tutorials won't tell you is how to tighten it up to get it to look right, to get it to be tight. Right? Okay. Now, a lot of them don't explain that. But if you watch what they're doing, listen to them, and do what they say, but if you watch their hands, how they pull the cord, where they grab it, what they do here, how they pull it this direction, all that, you can discern a lot of that, how to tighten it up, even though they don't explain it. Well, me, I try to explain that to you. But I know when I watch these tutorials, I know there's not a tutorial for this one on YouTube, but when I watch tutorials for videos, that's what I do. I watch their hands. How and where they grab the cord. Which direction are they pulling it to tighten it up? Makes sense? Okay, now with that said, now that you got the mechanics, that's what this part of the video is. It's just, I'm going to back the camera out and just let you watch me do this. Now, I'm not going to do it real fast, but I'm not going to do it real slow either. All right? Okay, so we're going to back the camera out. And I'm going to just kind of do this. I'll kind of talk through this a little bit. Like I said, I moved all that out of the way so you can see. Normally when I'm weaving, I don't move it out of the way. I just work around it. Because I don't want to have to move it up. And then when I get ready to bring it back down, that's all these extra steps I don't need to do. Just kind of keep them on their sides. Up over those two cord strands, down through, pulling a slack through, creating your bite, and going down through there. I do this quite a few ways. Yeah, I know. It's on the wrong side. I know that. But I will fix that. Take this. And when I get to this point, that's where I fix that. If I can get a hold of this thing. All right, now I did it's all the same thing. Same thing. I did it again, didn't I? That's the step I always forget to do, to wrap these gray pieces around. All you do if you forget is these two loops where it's coming around from the back. Just slide everything down those two loops, and you just go down through those loops. That's all you do. I get the Okay, now back here. Let's tighten that back up. Tightening it up. Kind of holding it. Pulling right there. Switching hands. Holding right there. Pushing it up. Pushing it up. Pushing it up toward the buckle. When I say pushing it up, that's what I mean. Grabbing it, and you take them thumbs and roll that excess through there. Now that you got that, we're going to tighten up those two pieces. Those two pieces of gray. Don't forget the step of the gray, right? And that's it. That's all there is to this one. It's not that hard. It looks really well, but it's not a hard weave once you get the mechanics. Pushing everything up. Tightening the first part of that blue knot and then tighten up the second part. Now we're going to tighten up those two pieces of gray. Alright. Oh, something doesn't look right over here. Oh, I see what it is. Alright, last time. Try that one more time. Yeah, I'm just going to twist it. I can see it already. So I'll fix it. You see that? That's it. That's all there is to it. Now, I'm going to weave this one out, and I'm going to get down to the end, and I'll come back and I'll show you how I finish it. Now, and then I'll show you how I finish it, and then I'll show you how to do the stitching. The stitching on this one, once you get started, it's not hard. But setting it up and anchoring it back here because of that little... the way those blue cords are, or like I showed you, the way those brown cords are, and you got the little gap in between them, it can be a little difficult to get this set up and to find where you need to go through the bracelet to get it to come out in the correct spot right here in the front. It can be a little tricky, but once you do that, pretty much the rest of it's easy. And down here, like anything, when it's all tight down there, the stitching can be a little tricky to get it to go through there, but it's not that hard of a stitch, and it really, really, really adds that pop to it. All right, but stick around. I'll be right back, folks. Okay, weavers, I've got it weaved out to the end. I'm gonna show you how get everything around on the back side and back weave it. We're going to take care of this up here. I'm going to show you how I anchor and start the stitching, okay? Alright, so what I've got to finish this off down here at the end, I've completed one full repetition of the knot, and I've got just enough room. Now it may, you may have, how much room you have, you may have to modify slightly what I'm going to show you, but this is what I will do on this one. I'm going to take these two gray pieces. I'm going to just simply wrap them around like I normally would. Now I'm not going to come back up through the center. I'm going to just wrap them around. And then the blue piece that's on this side and the blue piece that's on this side, all we're going to do is we're going to come up over let me zoom in so you can see what I'm going to do. And this will maintain the same look that we have with the bracelet, okay? So I'm going to take this blue one on this side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down between these two outer core strands that are on this side, right here at the buckle. We're going to come up over that piece of gray, though. You see that? I just pull it through and kind of get this gray and kind of pull it down this way so to maintain that angle that it's got, the little downward angle. All right, and then we're going to pull this blue, kind of pull it so it seats right up next to the edge of that buckle. That's going to maintain that same look. Right? Now it's not completely exact. It's not exactly like, but it's close. Right? Okay. Now, we'll get those out of the way. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take this blue one. We're going to come up and over that piece of gray. And again, going in that second slot, if you will. Those two core strands that are on the side, you're going to go over those and then down through. Right? And again, the same thing. Making sure that piece of blue is kind of seated in there. Pulling it. Pulling that one. And again, just like we had to do up here on the front, to make sure, see how they're in line, where I mentioned that, to make sure they stay next to each other all the way down. Same thing here on the bottom. If you look at it close, you can see they're kind of, this side over here is a little bit higher than the other one. So I'm going to try to adjust this a little bit. Okay. Now that's that. That's how we're going to do that. Now that they're all basically on the back side, we can deal with them back there. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and unclip this, unwrap all this stuff, and I'm going to take it off this jig. A little dust on it. Maybe I can get this thing to come loose. Yeah, there we go. See how tight it was? Okay, now, get the jig out of the way. Now, before I flip this thing over, I try to, if there's any dust on my work surface, that way I don't get dust, lint, whatever, dirt, debris, fod. Some of you may be familiar with the term. So when I lay it over like that to get to the non-display side, non-display side. Why do I've had somebody ask me, why do you say that? Well, because technically that's what it is. That's the display side that you're going to see, and that's the non-display side that you normally don't see. As opposed to saying prepositions. Prepositions, when not defined, can lead to confusion. Top, bottom, front, back. Well, if I say the top, that could mean up here. And this could be the bottom, as opposed to top and bottom. Does that make sense? Hence why When I say display side, there's no confusion. Display side, non-display side. Makes sense? That's why I use those terms. It cuts down and on the confusion. Okay, right. So we're gonna flip it over. Uh-oh, hang on. I'm gonna flip it over. First thing, I'm gonna take care of this right here. Now, what I'm gonna do with this, like I said at the beginning. Here, let's get the camera over here. Maybe you can see this. If you look at it, you can see where this blue piece is and this blue piece. There's like a little. The two blue pieces are more this direction. They're raised, and then in between them is a low spot, right? And that can make it to cut and burn on this a little difficult. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this one. Uh-oh. So it's gonna go in there. Yeah, it's gonna go in there enough. Let's make sure. Am I gonna do that the right way? Yeah, that'll work. Okay, what I'm gonna do with this one on this side is I'm gonna run it up under this piece of gray and this piece of blue. Just the top piece of blue, the one that's wrapping all the way around that edge, the longer looking piece. I'm going to run it up under both of those. Okay? I'm going to turn this thing around so I can get a hold of it. If you kind of come at it at this angle, you can get up under that piece of gray pretty easy. All right? It goes up under there pretty easy. Now, when you do it, make sure you don't have a twist. Oh, sorry, out of frame. Make sure you don't have a twist in this. You pull it through. Pull it. And that's it. That's all there is to that one. Okay, now we'll take the fid, put it on the other side. Do the same thing. Yeah, I'm going to have to shape that one. Give me just a second. This is a brand new roll or a brand new piece of gold here, straight off the hank, and it's been and I do this quite different than the way they teach you. They teach you to cut it at an angle and do it. I don't do that. Okay, now the same thing. See where it's at. We're going to go up under the piece of gray and that piece of blue, the one that's on the top toward the camera, is wrapping around. We're going to go up under both of them. Just going to get it there. And you can just angle it back. It goes right up under them. Pull it, make sure it doesn't have a twist in it. Okay. And pull it. And that's it. That's all there is for that. That's why I have these. These are a little bit long. And plus, this bracelet is not being, the measurements and everything down below are for a 7-inch wrist. This one is not for a 7-inch wrist. It's a little bit bigger. So I cut everything. I added a little bit to everything. That's why I've got a little bit of extra on it. But, you know, like I've said before, I would rather have scrap that's going to get cut off in the end and know I'm going to be able to finish the bracelet than to not have enough and get to right here and realize, man, my cords aren't long enough to finish. That's the most frustrating thing in the world. So, you know, cord doesn't cost that much. Throw you a little extra on there. That way you know you can finish it. Okay. We're going to take those off, and we're going to deal with this. Where are all my... There's one around here somewhere. Oh, well. Okay, so, like I've said in the past, when you know you're going to stitch a bracelet, do not cut and burn this final right up against the bracelet. Leave you about 1 inch, 2 inches, and then cut it. Why? Because if you cut and burn it right now, that piece of melted plastic potentially can be right in the way of where you need to get your stitching needle through there. Right? So you don't do that. You do your cut and burns at the very, very end. Right? So I'm going to cut these. Now these 2 pieces here, just me. I am going to burn the ends. Learn to burn those ends. Don't just leave them frayed in there. It can lead to potential trouble. Alright, now, on this side, what we're going to do, we look, you got a gray and a blue, and a gray and a blue. All I'm going to do is basically the same thing I did up here, right? But I'm going to run it up under. Let's see, how did I do it over here? I did it on 1 on that one. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run it up under that same piece of blue, the long piece, the one that's closest to the camera or on top. It runs all the way around. Right, I'm going to run it up under that one and the next one. And I'm going to do both the blue and the gray piece like that on both sides. Now if you notice, the blue one, the 2 blue pieces are more toward the center than the 2 gray. So when you do this, keep that blue toward the center and to keep the gray on the outer edge. Don't have them cross it over. Okay, so we're going to run this up under here. And this is usually pretty easy to get it up under there. It's not that tight of a fit. Even though we've pulled the bracelet pretty tight, it usually goes up under here pretty easy. We say that. I'm going to pull it through. Oh, that was my elbow hitting the light. Alright. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull it through. And I'm going to pull it toward me. That's going to kind of pull it toward the center. That way, because what'll happen, because these pieces wrap around, if you just pull it through, and when you go to do your cut and burn, it might kind of want to overhang this edge where you'll be able to see it. We don't want that. So I'm going to pull it back this direction to keep it toward the center. Same thing when I do this gray piece, right? I'm going to run it up under the same 2 blue pieces. I don't know how well you can see that. Pull it through, and then I'm going to pull it toward the center of the bracelet. All right, now I'm going to do that again when I actually, okay, now we're going to get those out of the way, and we're going to do the ones on this side. Same thing, up under those 2 pieces of blue. I'm keeping this blue one toward the center. Yeah, that side's a little bit tighter, but we see that, right? Alright, now that I got it up under there, I'm going to pull it the other direction. I'm going to pull it toward the center of the bracelet. Alright, I'm going to do the gray the same way. Running it right next to that piece of blue, up under the same 2 blue pieces of cord. When I get it right here to the end, and I pull it, I'm going to pull it this direction. Pull it toward the center. Now hopefully, I'm going to try to show you what I'm talking about. Okay, these 2 pieces right here that are on here's the front side, or the display side, right? And this piece of blue and gray is the one that's on that side, right? Well, if you look, if I take that piece of gray and I do it like that, you see how you can see it sticking out on the side? If you do a cut and burn, it's going to be seen right there on the side, and we don't want that. That's why I'm pulling those two pieces this way, to keep them from wrapping around the front and being seen. We're going to try our best. This is one of the things I was talking about. The way the nature of the way this weave is, it makes these cut and burns a little difficult to hide them properly. So, you know, this is one of the ways I try to keep them on the back. Okay, now that we got all that, like I say, I'm gonna pull those toward the center again when I get to the point of actually doing the final cut and burn. Okay, now I'm gonna cut all this at one time. Maybe about 1 inch or 2 inches. And cut those. Now, I'm gonna get all this out of the way, so none of them get lost. I think one's, I've got a stray around here somewhere, I don't know. I've got so many of these, I can't remember how many I'm supposed to have in my holder over here. I guess I should make a mental note of that, right? Okay, now, just like we did with these, I'm going to burn the ends of these. But I'm going to separate them out so they're not touching. And we'll just burn them. I'm not going to try to shape them or anything. Just going to burn them. That way they don't fray. And what, like I've mentioned this before, what potentially could happen is that if you leave them unburned, for whatever reason, while you start flipping and flopping and stitching, one of the individual strands of this, you could grab it, snag it, and you could pull it, and it causes a run. And that run can, you know, affect this piece of cord and all the way, and it can affect right here on the front. And we don't want to do that. So we try to burn it that way. That alleviates the potential for that. Now, I'm not saying it can't happen, because you can still snag this piece. I mean, in fact, you can snag it in the front and totally mess it up. But we're going to be careful. We're going to do everything we can to prevent any of that from happening. Okay, so there we go. Now, we're ready to start stitching. Okay, now, like I said, the way this thing's put together, if we look, hopefully you can see this a little bit better now. Now, that piece of gold is in between this piece of blue and the piece of blue below it. Right? So when you go to cut these, to do your cut and burn, don't cut it so close that when you go to burn it, you'll get on the blue. Right? Okay, now with that in mind, just keep that in mind. Then we're going to, because when we anchor this, we want to anchor this because it's a very small piece. We want to anchor it in the same spot where these golds are, but we don't want to do it like over here by itself where it's going to get down in that little groove and we can't get our flame to it without burning stuff. So what I've been doing is I've been running it so it is sitting right on top of that piece of gold. Right? Now, it may not stay that way. When we start stitching and flipping and flopping, it may not stay that way. But if we start off that way, and when we finally get done and we come back to do the cut and burn, it will be easier to get it back up there where we want it. Right? You be mindful. We prepare now for what we know is coming. Does that make sense? Because I did this quite a few times, and that little groove between them two pieces of blue was always throwing me off, and I kept going, And I said, well, you just got to be mindful of it and consider that when you start doing all this back weaving and anchoring your stitching and stuff like that. That way your cut and burn in the end will hopefully be a lot cleaner, and you don't get on the bracelet. You simply burn the pieces you want. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, the stitching on this is it's a little funny the first one because you can't see where you're going. That's the problem with this. But once you get past this up here, it's like I've said in a lot of my stitching videos, the top of the bracelet and the bottom of the bracelet is always a little bit different. Why? Because up at the top, everything's real compacted. A lot of times your core strands are all bunched together. They're not laid out flat, so everything's tight, and hence that makes the stitching a little bit difficult. Same thing down here. All the core strands start coming back toward this buckle and everything gets tight. Plus, you've got all this back woven into the back side. That creates more tightness in there. So the stitching can be a little difficult, right? So, anchoring this and getting it to sit right is important, and it's a little bit more difficult. But once you get that, the actual stitching, it's pretty simple. It's side spiral stitch. That's all it is. You just got to figure out where to go through it, okay? Now, what we're going to do, I'm going to show you this on this one I already have. This one I've already done. If we look, okay, my handy dandy, new and improved laser paracord pointer here. Okay, what we're going to do, you see this piece of the espresso, the dark brown. See how it comes up and it wraps around the edge. Comes up and wraps around the edge. Our stitching is going to be toward this side, the top, toward the buckle of that piece of brown. And all we're going to do is follow it around, right? Okay, so we got to come out right there in that area. Okay, now to come out there, where in the world do you go through in the back side of the bracelet? Yeah, it took me a little while to feel through there without jamming right through my cord, right? So, I found this to help out a little bit. I've said this in the past. If you're trying to come through, it doesn't matter which way. It doesn't matter which way, just in general, when you're stitching and you're trying to go through the bracelet, whether it's from the display side to the non-display side or from the non-display side to it doesn't matter. If you can't get it to go through, you can't find the right angle, right spot, or whatever, what you do is you flip it over to the other side to where you want it to come out at and go through that way. And kind of wallow it out. Open up that hole a little bit. Now, you don't have to go all the way through. Just kind of open it up, make some space, and pull your needle back out, and then flip it around, and then go through. And that will sometimes make it a little easier for you to get the needle through in the right spot. Makes sense? Now, on this one, I would highly suggest doing that. Okay, so I'm going to flip it over. Not that one, Steve. We're not stitching that one. This one right here. If we look, let me see. Because this, like I said, starting this one off can be a little tricky. But once you get it going, it's no problem. Because if you look, you've got actually two pieces of blue. You got this piece of blue here that's kind of running in this direction. And then you got this other piece of blue right here that's running in this direction. And they kind of both meet right in here. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to go through. If you look, okay, you see this piece of gold here. You got the two center pieces, right? This piece right here to the right of it, in between these two pieces of gold. And you see that little locking knot that we talked about in the beginning. Below that, in between these two core strands and below that locking knot, just above those two pieces of blue, where they all kind of converge, you're going to go through right there. And it's going to come out. I can get it to go through there. A lot of times I can get it to go through. Yeah, that's a little tight. I'm going to go to the display side. I'm going to flip it around. I was trying to go through this way, and I kind of opened it up a little bit, and I'm going to flip it over. Not anchored it yet, but I'm going to find my hole in here where I want it to go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run it, I'm going to anchor it up under this blue and gray, just like that piece of gold is. I'm going to go through right here in this area to the front. I'm tilting it up like this because I'm looking at it. See how it went right through there? Okay, now where I'm going, the way I'm going through here and where I'm going through here, you only do that on this first one. The rest of them, it's done slightly different, so pay attention. We'll get that through there. Yeah. Okay, now I'm going to come back and I'm going to anchor this thing. Let's see. You can get it up under here. Alright, non-display side, this is where we're starting, on this side over here. You can get it, follow the edge of that piece of gold, and it'll go right up under that piece of blue. Alright, now, if you do it just right, you can get it up under that piece of gray too. See, it goes up under there pretty easy. Alright, now, I'm going to pull it through. Be careful that we don't pull the thing all the way. We'll get so motivated that we pull it through. Now, when we get close to the end, I'm going to show you this. This is the way I've been doing this. Okay? Because we want this piece of micro cord. We don't want it over here in the edge. We want it sitting right on top of that piece of gold there. So what I'm going to do, if I can get a hold of it with my hands, all right, is I'm going to pull both ends toward me, and it's going to cause it to move itself up over that other piece of gold. Does that make sense? Let me get it up here and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Now, if you look, you can see this piece of gold microcord running through in the same place that piece of gold is. But it's not next, it's not on the side of it. It's laying right on top of it. That way, when we go to do our cut and burn in the end, because of this little groove that they're sitting in, that piece of microcord potentially does not get lost down in that groove. Right? Now, granted, it may not stay right there while we stitch, but when we come back, that's where we want it. Okay? So, we're going to pull it through, leave the tail hanging. Now, right here, I always say, reach up there and pinch it with your thumb. Pinch it. That way it'll hold it in place so it doesn't move. Now, we're going to go back through here. In between these two pieces of gold, right in the middle, we see where I come out at. Now, it's going to angle down because we want it running right next to that piece of blue. Now, let me get it through here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Now, when you do this, when you pull this through, when I pull this through, all this gold right here is going to just kind of disappear, and you're not going to see it. See, it kind of gets pulled down in this little crevice right here, and you don't see it. So, just be mindful. And when you get on this side, you got to remember to hold this piece. Hold this tail so you don't pull it. Hold that. Now take this and just kind of, what I'm doing is sticking my needle in there and I'm pushing that micro so it's going to rest right on the top of that piece of blue. Right? We don't want it way up here. We don't want it up there. We want it down around that thing. Like I said, it's just like this first one. This first one, you gotta work it. But once you get it in spot, the rest of them are pretty easy. It goes right where you want it to. Okay? So, now. Okay. We've got that. Now, here's the part. Now, this one, we're going to have to do it just like all of them. We're going to have to stitch in the normal way we're going to do it, but we got all this stuff in our way. It's in our way right now. So what I'm going to do is we're going to come around, following the top piece, that piece of blue right on the top. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go up under this piece of blue and that piece of gold that's up under it. It goes right through there, right? So pull your excess through. And when you go to pull this, oops, sorry, get that piece of microcord up under all this stuff. All right, kind of fold it back, get it up under there, and then when you go to pull this and you pull out that slack, make sure, again, you can do that same technique I did up here. To get that piece, the initial anchor piece, to get it to sit where I wanted it to, you can do the same thing with this piece. Before you pull that loop all the way through, because if I pull it, it's not gonna sit where I want it. So I'm gonna take that piece right there, and this piece on this side, and I'm gonna pull it that direction. That way, when I go to pull this, it's going to cause it over, and do this. You'll see me do this. I'll stick my thumb up here, and I'll use my thumbnail there, my friend. They come in handy sometimes, and it guides it to where I want it to go. See how it sits above that piece of blue? Above, what I say, up here toward the buckle, right? Just kind of give it a little snow. Alright. Now, we got that done. Okay. Now we got to get back around the front. Now what we're going to do here, we're going to come out right here. That's where we're going to come out at. Now this is not hard. You can't see where you're going, but it will go through there. Bend this up. If we look, I'll get all this out of the way so you can see what I'm talking about. If you look, okay, here, I'll do it this way. I'll show you down here where you can actually see where none of this is in the way. I'll show you right here. If you look, okay, you got these two pieces of blue that are coming around, right? Well, if you look right here in the middle, you got those two pieces that have crossed over. What we're going to do is we're going to go toward the bottom down here, below those two pieces of blue. But above that piece of gray, you're going to go through, and it's going to come out right there where we want it to, right? But see, up here, you got all this stuff in the way, and you can't quite see, and everything's tight and all that, so you just got to be careful, but it will go through there. Now, let me get over here so I can see where I'm going. We see where it come out at. It goes through there. Now we pull it. Make sure that when we pull it, it's not wrapped around all these other tails we got. We're going to get it back up under. Here. Okay, it's twisted up in there. Let me fix this. Hang on. Okay, we got it where we want it. Now, I'm gonna reach up here to this tail. I'm gonna hold it. Put some pressure on it, and I'm gonna. Right? Okay. Now, we see where it come out at. I'm gonna do the same thing. We're gonna follow that top part of that blue around. What we're gonna do. We'll follow this top part of the blue around. Now, you can try to go through right here, but it's a little difficult. It's a lot easier if you actually move your needle down to the bottom of the piece of blue, and you can go up under that other piece of blue pretty easy. But that's not where we want it. We want it back this way, right? But I'm going to show you how to do it. Again, the thumbnail, my friend. We pull it through. And right before I'll reach up here with my thumb and just put it. That way the cord is going to slide off my thumb right into that groove I want it to be in. Make sense? And then just kind of. And if we look on the back, this is just me though. If we look on the back, you see how it's following the top of that piece of blue, but right here when it goes up under, it wants to be angled down this way. No, we want it up here. Just kind of give it a little, and it'll go right there where you want it. Okay. Once we get past these little tails, it's easy. Now again, all we're going to do, where we're at, we're going to go through right here. Below these two pieces of blue, you can see them. I know you can't see them on camera, but when you do this, whatever color you choose, you're going to see those two pieces of whatever color you got. One's coming this way, one's coming this way, across it, below those two pieces. And above that piece of gray, right in here. And just kind of, and it goes right through there. All right. Push it through, making sure we're not caught on all these tails over here. All right. And then just kind of give it a little tug, cinching it down. Okay, and again, same thing. Like I say, we'll follow that piece of blue around. Now we want it to sit up here. Now you can try if you want. You can try to get it to go through right there, but I found it a lot easier is to actually follow the bottom part of that blue, and it goes right through there. And you pull. Getting a twist out of it if I can get a hold of it. And then putting my thumb right there to hold it where I want it. And it seats it right into place. We see how now it's coming, it's kind of following the top of that piece of blue, top toward that way. Right. Now when we get here, it's going to angle down and go back below those two pieces of blue. Right here. See, it goes right through there. It's easy. Once you get past this and you see what you're doing, it's easy. It's really easy. Takes a little time to do it. Right. I hold it that way. I'm going to follow the bottom part of that blue around to go up under the other piece of blue just because it's easier to get it to go through there. I say that and there you go. See? Pull it through. Right before you get to the end, just reach up over your thumb and then put it in a way and it'll guide it right there where you want it to go. Right above that piece of blue. Right? That's all there is to it. Now I'm going to show you this. Okay, I'm going to show you this now because I'm going to stitch it out on this side and I'm going to stitch it out on this side. When you go to anchor this up here on this side, do it the same way. Do it the exact same way. Everything's a mirror image. Just be careful if you need to. Run from this side and pull out and go back. You know, you'll get it, okay? But when you do this side, I've noticed this. I guess you could do it this way too. But because I'm right-handed in the way I'm holding this bracelet. Okay, let's just say, I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. I'll show you when I actually get down here toward the bottom over here. I'll most likely come and show you. Okay? But let's just say we've stitched this much, but we're on this side, right? Now just, if I can get all this untangled, okay? So let's just pretend we're coming around this way now, right? Okay. We go up under that piece of blue. Alright, like we've been doing over here. We'll pull it through. I'm not going to pull this real tight because I'm going to have to take this back out, but I'm going to do this just to show you what I'm talking about. Okay? Now the way, because this works out because I'm right-handed, and the way I'm woven, the way these two strands, you remember in the beginning when I told you if you start with this side, it's going to be closer toward the buckle, and then the other side's going to go below it. Okay, because I've done it that way, and because I'm right-handed in the way I'm orientated and the way I do this, what I'm about to show you what can work. Now, if you're left-handed, you do it the other way, it may work out the other way, but I'll just show you this so you can see this. So when you actually do this, you sit down and figure it out for yourself, which way's better and all this, but you'll see what I'm talking about. Or not which way's better, but what I'm about to show you I can't do on this side because of the way I'm holding the bracelet. I can't see it, I can't do it, right? But it goes through just as easy. When you come around on this side, for me, I'm going to go through, went up under there, and I'm going to go between these two pieces of blue and above the gray. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight through the middle. It would go straight through the middle, right? But where do we want it at? We want it over here on this side, this piece of gold that we're running up under there, that piece of 550 gold, we want the needle over here on this side. So what you do, you just barely push it through. If you look, you can see the tip of that needle, right? Hopefully you can see that. All right? You just barely push it through. And what you do is you cock that needle out this way. And if you do it just right, you can get it to go up under that piece of gold. Like I said, it works for me because I'm right-handed, the way I'm woven this and all this. Now, doing this little trick right here, it may work better for you when you're doing it on this side. It just depends, right? But you just pull it through the same way. That's all that is. It's going through the same spot as it is over here. It's going through and coming out in the same spot. It's just because I can see it this way because I'm holding the bracelet different and I'm right-handed and all, it works out that that's the way I do it. Does that make sense? Okay, now, with that said, I'm going to undo this part and I'm going to continue back, stitching out the rest of this side, and then I'm going to start this side. Once I get down here to the end, I'll come back and I'll show you how I finish it and cut and burn and all that good stuff. But with that said, stick around, because before it's over with, we're going to have this a stitched modified dignity, and this one is turning out to look great. Okay, weavers, I'm back. I got it stitched out on down one side, and I'm almost finished with the other side. Got what, 2 more repetitions here to go? But I figured I'd do this and I'd show you. And we'll do our final cut and burn. Let's see. Just continue on like we've been doing. Following that piece of blue. You can see where it's coming out at. Follow that piece of blue around and go up under the other piece of blue. I've been doing the same thing on this side, kind of using my thumb to use it as a guide to get it to go where you want it to when you pull it. Okay? And like I showed you, because of I'm left-handed, the way I'm woven it and all that kind of stuff, when I do it this way, you stick it through right there in the middle, and it'll come out. I don't know if you can see the tip of that or not, right there. Alright? But before you stick it through that far, you kind of angle it over and get it, and it'll go right up under that piece of gold, and it'll come out on the other side the way you want it, where we want it. And I know you can't see it on camera right there, but I can see the tip of that thing. I'm going to angle it out, and it'll go right up under that piece of gold. Right? Push it through, mindful that it doesn't get caught up in the tails of your 550 and that other piece of micro. Alright. Now when you get to right here, you're going to have to go up under that piece of blue where the tails of that other 550 are. So just be mindful. It'll go up under there. Just be mindful. See, it goes right up under there. Let's see, compared to some of the stitchings I've done, stitch patterns I've done, this one is pretty simple. Once you get past the beginning, it's pretty simple. Again, I'm gonna barely stick it through there. I know you can't see it on camera, it's right there. Here, let me see. Let's see if I can't hold it. You can see the tip of it stick through. I don't know if you can see that on camera. Like I said, before you stick it all the way through, you'll see the tip and then just kind of tweak it and get it over there on this outer edge on this side of that piece of gold. And that one right there is going to be the last one, because I'm not going to wrap around this last piece right here of blue, but this is going to be the last one. Right. So on this last one, we're just going to follow it. And I'm going to go up under this piece of gray and that piece of blue. But then I'm going to turn around and run it back up under that piece of blue and that next piece of blue. So, you know, make sure it seats where I want it to. Right, okay. Non-display, display side, this is where we started. This is where we're finishing. So we're going to flip it over to the non-display side. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to just run it back up under these two pieces of blue, just like this blue and gray piece of 550. Right? And again, like I said, keeping it, that piece of micro on top of these two pieces of 550. Alright, go right through there. Pull it through. Alright. Now, leaving you a little bit of length. Get rid of this. Put my needle back over here, so I won't have a stray one like I think I do over the 550 one. Okay, now even though I'm about to cut that off, I'm still going to do it. Force of habit. Just burn it. Let it sit there for a second. Okay, now, so what I'm going to do, let me zoom in just a little bit. Alright. Whatever you use as a smoothing tool, get it out, have it ready. Okay, now I'm going to do this first, up here. Okay, so I'm going to spin it around. I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to look at it. Make sure everything's where I want it to be. Before I do a final cut and burn, make sure everything is where you want it. Okay, now you got a piece of 550 and a piece of micro on one side, a piece of 550 and a piece of micro on the other side. Now, like I said in the beginning, make sure you see how this piece of micro is sitting right here on top of that piece of 550. Now, this one is kind of moved to the side. That's all right. We're going to fix it. That way, when you go to do this cut and burn, it's going to make it a little bit easier. It makes it a little easier for me. So, okay, and we're going to pull them. Okay, Now on this one, like I've said this in the past in some of the other videos, before you cut them, take them and kind of fold them back over themselves. That way they're not laying flat, but bend them back. That way when you do cut them, hopefully they'll be standing up straight as opposed to laying down. Because on this one, it does make a little bit of a difference, because like I said, the way these two pieces of blue are, they're sitting down in between there. So you got to get the flame in there without burning everything around it. And it can be a little tricky. Right? And I'm not going to cut them all at once. A lot of times, even though they're two separate, back woven in two separate places, I'll cut them at once. Now, I'm going to cut these as two separate units, if you will. Now, take this. See if I can't fold it back over itself and get it to stand up a little bit better. All right, now. I'm going to leave a little length on this. That way it's sticking up above those two pieces of blue. Yeah, I may have got that too close, but that's okay. We'll work with it. I'll get it to work. I'm going to cut this one too to get these tails out of the way so they don't potentially get burned while I'm burning the other ones. Fold them back over themselves. That piece of micro just does not want to go where I want it to go. I have to work with it. Okay. We can see this. Alright. Now this can be tricky. What I'm going to do, this is the way I'm going to try to do this, okay? I say try. I'm going to burn these two on this side, but I'm going to come at it from this angle right here. But you got to be mindful because this piece of blue is angled. So when you do it, you got to kind of shoot it so it goes, you got these two pieces of blue that are running, right? You got to shoot that flame right between them. It's it can be a little tricky. But if you're careful, you can get this to work right. That right there will work. Man, that one turned out pretty good. Alright, now, before I do this side, I'm going to try to, and this never works, but I'm going to try it anyway. I'm going to try to bend them back up just a little bit. And I'm going to do it the same way. I'm going to come at it from this side like this. Got on that little piece of blue, that other piece of blue, just a little bit, not much though. Okay, that's all good. Now let's get rid of these. Okay, now this one, it's the same way, but again, like I said, well look, you see how this piece of gray is coming out, and it's on the side of the bracelet. Remember when I showed you I pulled these two pieces toward the center? That way they wouldn't be. Okay, and I said we'll probably fix it in the end. Yep, that's what I'm about to do. I'm going to pull them again toward the center. Right? I'm going to do the same thing with these two. I'm going to pull them back toward me so they're not on the edge, but they wrap around toward the back side, the center, or the middle of the bracelet. Okay, and again, I'm going to cut them separately. This is the same way. Leave you a little length here. Let me do this too. Let me try to fold it back over itself. Maybe that'll help. Okay, now This piece of gray closest to me, it's a little longer than I would like. But that's okay, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to come at it from this side. I'm going to get it. And it's going to slowly. I'm going to do this slowly. I'm not going to just put the flame straight on it. And I'm going to melt it. And when it gets all melty, I'm going to take this. I'm going to take my smoothing tool and I'm going to start on this edge and roll it toward that center. That way it's going to push all that stuff around the back. Don't roll it towards you because it'll push it around the outside of it. We don't want that. Okay. Let's get our scissors out of the way. Hopefully I can get this to work. You can see it right here on the side just a little bit. Not much, though. I mean, when you look at it straight ahead, no problem. But when you turn it, you see it just a little bit. And I'd prefer it not to be that way, but on this one, it's kind of hard to get it to do right. Just because of the nature of the way this thing's woven. Okay, now, again, I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to come at it from this angle. Oh yeah. Make sure there ain't no little hard spots that's going to rub against your skin. Alright, let's get our tools out of the way. Get our lighter up. Because this one right here, I throw this one at you. The nature of the way this thing's woven together, when you weave it and then you start doing the stitching, it naturally wants to curl back around the opposite way that it's supposed to. Right? So, you know, you kind of have to work it a little bit. Now I made this. I sized it for a 7 3/4 inch wrist. So let's see. Yeah, it looks like a 7 3/4 inch. There's a 7-inch mark. There's an 8-inch mark. 7 3/4 inches. All right, I'll give you a look at it. Let's see. Well, we started right here. Got a brush brass buckle, gold, smoke gray, midnight blue, and it's been stitched in gold also. And these colors look really good together, and man, this bracelet turned out really, really well. And all the little gray pieces are pretty much in line. Now, some of them are a little off, but you can kind of come back and kind of adjust them. Like this one on the end, it's a little off, but you can kind of, you know, need be, you can take, just kind of adjust it a little bit. But the one at the end and the one at the beginning actually looks pretty good. That's the one that always seems to want to mess up. But it looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. I call that mission accomplishment right there. But that's how I weave and stitch a stitched modified Dignity. And with that, I'll end this one like I end them all. Keep it neat, keep it clean, and keep it tight. Happy weaving, folks.